Hi friends, my name is Zakib and welcome back to my channel Developers Point. In this video, I will be showing you how to create a asynchronous controller. तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं. Let's begin. In this video, what's going to happen is like our API method is going to return a list of users to our user client. In our case, now the user client is like Postman. So here it's returning a list of users or specific user as we have seen in the previous video. So like we'll be just going back to our Visual Studio's code, and here we can see some code returning that data. So when it comes to scalability, what we are doing here is not a really good practice, because this is what we are doing here is a synchronous code. And what this means is like when we make a request to this code or like to this point, what happens is like the thread that are handling currently these blocks gets blocked until the database request is fulfilled. But in our case, it's hard to justify this because of the data. We have the moment and what we are going to do with this data. But imagine if we really had a very complex query that went to a database and it had to fetch a certain number of records, like huge number of records from the database, and that's got 5 million records in it. And we need to sort, learn and filter some of them and just bring back some of queries to and do some data manipulations in some way from the database. Then our database query might take several seconds or it might take longer. And if you're blocking a thread for that particular database operation, then that's not a good thing or not a good practice. Now in modern web services, like what's happening is like everything is multi-threaded. And let's say for an example, you have got an Apache web server and it got say 100 threads available. Now at this point, like you will be thinking, well, that's not a big problem. I have got just 100 threads to work with. Why can't one of them just wait for the data to come back? And the answer to that one is like, well, it's just a kind of wasteful. Imagine if you have 1000 users, then your application is going to serve only 100 at a time. Then it's wasting the resources that were available. So like what we can do to fix this is like we can make our code asynchronous, and we can tell our friends that in our case, or in this case, when you go to the database with this code, so what we can do is like we can make this of our code like asynchronous code, and we can tell our threads in this case like when you go to the database or the database server, pass this request onto other thread, that the thread go and deal with getting other data. You're getting it, right? Like we can just tell the threads like pass on this thread to other thread and get the other data from other thread, like that the operation goes on. And in the meantime, if someone else is gonna hit this request, then I'm gonna serve this request. And if they also want something from that database or from the database, I am going to pass that off to another thread as well. And what this means is that like our database is instantly more scalable because of the code we are making, and the code is like asynchronous. And a general guidance for all of you is like, if you're always making a request to a database, then always make that code a asynchronous code, because it's a negligible performance hits and it instantly make our application scalable. And if you don't do it and your app surprisingly gets a lot of customers or like more customers than you are expecting, then at that moment you have to refactor a lot of code and you may experience some awkwardness as you tell your customers to be patient while still like waiting to get the data. So now what we'll be doing is like we'll have a look at how can you make this whole code a asynchronous code. It's not a big effort and it's a best practice to do so. So what we need to do like to make a method asynchronous. So first of all, we just need to add a keyword called async. And what we are going to tell is like we are going to tell our method. But at this moment what you're returning here is like we are returning an action result. But what we need to do is like we just need to make it a task. So what we'll be doing is like I'll be just starting a task here and I'll be wrap this action result for the task. So I'll be just closing this and wrapping it off. But what you can see is an error. So just hover over it and we can see like a type that wraps either an enumerable or app user instance or an action result. T value is enumerable app users. The type or namespace task could not be found. So like it's giving us some error to you here. Using directory reference or assembly reference is missing, right? So just let's check it. What's the error or what's the issue? So I think a lot of people may know how to solve this. Like here, as you can see, the type or namespace task could not be found. I think a lot of you may have done this earlier or like may have guessed it before, but now what I'll be doing is like I'll be just placing my cursor here and I'll be just pressing control period here and I'll be just getting in using systems.threading.task here. Now you can see that the error has been gone here. But what happens now is like we'll be getting a warning here saying that like this async method lacks await operator and will return synchronously. Consider using await operator to await non-blocking API calls or await task.run to do CPU bound work with a background thread, blah blah blah. Huh. The most hated thing in the coding is like the errors and the warnings, but as a developer we need to deal with it. So like how we are gonna fix this warning? So what we are just gonna do is like we're just gonna tell this method or this line to await. So like how can we tell this line to await is like we'll be just adding a await keyword here. Now here we get another problem. Now here it says like here our method toList method is not a asynchronous method, and here we need to use the asynchronous method of list. So like for that I'll be just adding here async, and here like it the toList asynchronous method comes from a different namespace. So what we'll be doing is like we'll be just quick fixing it. I'll be just clicking or pressing on like control period, and here we will be getting in the using Microsoft Intuitive Framework.co. So as you can see here like the error has been gone. Now like here this method of HTTP get for all the users like returning the whole list has become a asynchronous method. So like what we can say is like we can just returning this list of users here asynchronously. So what happens is like when the request goes to a database, this code passes, it waits, it defers it to a task that and then goes and makes a query to a database. When this task comes back, we need to get the result out of this task here. And then what we'll be doing is like to get the result out of this task, what you'll be using here a wait keyword. Like not only await, we can also use the other keywords. Instead of using await, what we can do is like just by removing the await we get a error here, and like instead of await keyword what we can just use is like we can just keep a period here, and here we can see like we have other methods also. From that what I'll be using is like I'll be just using the result, and you can see the error has been removed here. But like I just want to go with my await keyword, so just like here I'll be writing await. So return the list of users like we have awaited, unwrap it from the task here, and then we have written the list of users to this asynchronous method. Then what we are going to do next is like we'll be doing the same for that HTTP get of ID method also. So like we'll be just making this asynchronous method by just typing async method, and like I'll be just doing it async, and we'll just make it a task and wrap it up here, and I'm gonna wrap this. Then here we can see the same warning, it says like the method is not asynchronous. And to fix this, like what we are going to is like we are going to use the await keyword here to make it await, and then like what we are going to do is like we are going to fix this by saying find async of ID. So here as you can see now it's fixed. Now like what we'll be doing is like we'll be just going back to our Postman and checking like whether the data is coming back, like we are getting the data to our client or not. So what we'll be doing is like we'll be just hitting the users here, and we can see like we are getting back our data, and like we'll be getting request for a particular user, like we are getting here Ben, and like it's a very small list, or like we have a small amount of data, so it's not a big issue. We'll be getting our data very fast. Yeah, that's it for now. So finally, like what I like to say is like whenever you are using a database, like you are making a request to a database, like if you're fetching a data or sending a data to a client from a databases, then what you always need to remember is like always use the asynchronous methods. It might not lead a problem in a smaller amount of cases, like smaller amount of data, but it may lead to troublesome problems to you when the large amount of data, like in millions tons of data, is imported or like fetched from the database. So now like what we're going to look at next is like what are the changes what we have made till now and the API project which we have created, how to get it saved to GitHub. So what we'll be going doing is like we'll be just going back to our Visual Studio's code. Okay friends, like here the creation of an asynchronous code gets completed, and then in my next video what I'll be looking at is like how to make the project like till now till for like what we have created the API project .NET Core project, and like how to get it stored in the GitHub, and how to get access it from anywhere. So like we'll be looking at that, how to push the code and pull the code. So guys, that's it for today in this video, and so please like, comment and subscribe to my channel Developers Point. Thank you.